Friday afternoon for an hour, Roy. It's allowed to move on. There's no definition.
Sorry, Dennis. Joel,
Yes.
is there noise in the room?
Yes, I will move. Kiddies, are you staying here or moving away? Yeah, living
in the middle of the hot dog. So.
Sorry, Dennis. Every second word, I can't hear because Joel's phone picks up noise.
Okay, I moved away.
We'll manage.
Yeah. Right. So existentialism, eh? Or existence?
Existence. I thought that's the place to start, isn't it?
I put a little piece up. Did you see it?
Yeah, I did. Let me get my phone now.
Where's the charger?
So we can treat it like a court of law. We're reading it into the record.
All right. Yes.
So are we expecting others or not?
Well, Jenny, and I couldn't find Dob on Skype, so I don't know whether he's got a Skype account.
So
I couldn't find him. And I added Andrew Liddell, I added.
Yeah.
And I'll add Mike Morgan as well if he wants to be in on it.
Did you carry on? I mean, people like John.
Well, it's the first one, Roy. I'll just see how it goes.
Yeah.
If we can actually get it to be a sensible regular thing, then I'll add a few other people in. But
yeah,
it has to be running for a couple of weeks before I start inviting 100 people.
Is it weekly then?
It'll be weekly or monthly, Roy. I don't mind. Probably monthly is as good as any way to do it because it's impossible to pin you two down for definitions to begin with.
Well, it fills the week nicely. It adds to what we've got.
Yeah. No, I will always try. Maybe I'll fail, Dennis, but I will always rise to any challenge. Whether I can...
Go on.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
No, I'm saying the very idea of definition, as I was trying to explain to someone this morning, is rooted in what I see perhaps as analytic philosophy or broader modern philosophy. In other words, from Descartes, this idea of argument or statement and argument in support of a statement raises its, in my opinion, its ugly head. But David Vincent tells me that that's his perception of classical philosophy. Now, when I studied classical philosophy, that was not, of course, Plato uses these things, but it's almost secondary. The beauty of it is the audacity of ideas, not pinning them down, but rather releasing them, letting them fly away from the confines or the cage or the imprisonment of definitions. And I'm always prepared to, try my best. And in fact, I started writing like that because of the likes of you, Dennis. My last posting was, I actually brought the dictionary into my shame. I sort of pinned it down to definitions. I'm not mocking you, I'm mocking dictionary. But people love it. People love it. People feel that if you give them 6 words, that is better. And maybe it is good to have some discipline like that. But provided one does not reduce conceptualization to definition.
No, I don't think we'll be doing that, but we have to have a place to start, don't we?
Yeah, no. In terms of method or process, I will accept anything. And you are right, it's a place to start, yes. Anyway, whenever you are ready, I told Roy earlier, I prepared something. So I don't know if you want to wait for others or if you want to try and ring Dob or...
I couldn't find Dob on Skype, but I'll ring Jenny again.
Whoa! Mommy, look at the living room. Look at
No, Jenny's not available, Joel, so you might as well just start and see where we go.
Okay, so we'll start. So I was thinking to support my flippant statement that I would apply Sartre's dictum across modernity. And I came up with, I suppose, 3 supporting ideas to my statement that existence is essence. Hold on. Shh. Kiddies, go upstairs. Okay, the first is that I invoke Marx, Freud, Einstein, and Darwin. And in their respective fields, they are saying what Sartre summarizes so succinctly. In other words, Marx says infrastructure is where it all begins, or what underpins culture, or what underpins consciousness, or however it's translated into English, I don't know. So he has this idea of the equivalent in economics or in society of infrastructure. Roy will know how to translate it, underpinning culture. Freud, of course, in the field of the human mind, goes to the unconscious as the repository of life, of being, and interestingly devoid of essence in the Sartrean terms, because you don't know, and it is in a very pre-linguistic sort of form, but the unconscious is the equivalent of existence to ego or the conscious in terms of essence. Darwin, of course, reduces the way we are to our genes, or to a mechanism, a blind mechanism of evolution, in which, in the dark, as it were, unbeknown to us, things evolve and decline or select or come to dominate or survive or perish. And it is this existence, literally actually, but even symbolically, where Darwin is the equivalent of Sartre in saying existence before essence. Einstein is more complicated, and I'm less able to formulate, but essentially he, I think, suggests that the field of forces, or as I come to understand it, the constants of the universe, namely the speed of light and so on, underpin the physics, or underpin the way we understand entities or matter. So, and of course in subatomic or quantum mechanics, it goes to these tiny things that occur, which I draw an analogy to existence. But at any rate, it's a very succinct, quick, by definition, simplistic and incomplete, in which I feel that I give Sartre credence, that he operates or summarizes, because he is the last of them all, as it were, that he sums up a very deep, I suppose, streak of modernity, and I gave just 4 examples, in which everyone, it's almost traced to the bottom, as it were. Everyone wants to say that that which is at the root, or that which is unbeknown, or that which is blind, and so on, precedes or underpins that which is, appears, or that which manifests, or that which forms, as I understand, Sartre refers to as essence. So what am I trying to say before I move on to the second is that when I say existence is essence, it seems to me that it's a sleight of hand, because what they say is that existence is essence. In other words, they transfer to existence the qualities or properties or features of essence. Existence becomes this primordial, all-encompassing, underlying, powerful, natural, or the thing that stands at the, almost like forms, the form of things in which all phenomena, if I can use this word, begins, or hold on.
Right. Right. Can I jump in, Joel? Because I need
Yes,
to.
go on.
I've got a picture in my head and I need to get it out in words. So, from what you've just said, that the image, the kind of feeling and the image I've got in my head is that we're living in the human subconscious. So all the archetypes of the structure, and we're swimming about in this ocean of archetypes, basically. So you look around. So the way you can merge existence and essence would be to make the archetypes physical, so you can see them in front of you or whatever. So they're not in your subconscious; they're physically manifested around you. That makes them existent. Is that what you're trying? Is that kind of what you were trying to get at?
Well, I think you take it further than me. I mean, I thought I was making a small point, but as ever, perhaps I'm verbose, or I'm using too many words. I was simply trying to say that modernity seems or claims it shifts to some substance that is different from essence. And on the face of it, it is, because it's sort of, existence. It's sort of before, or it's like the base before the edifice comes to be. It's like the pre-linguistic or pre-conceptual, or something visceral, or something so physical, or but what I'm trying to say, maybe I need to work on it, is that it is simply saying that that is what modernity evolved to be the essence. Maybe I'm playing with words here, but when Sartre says existence before essence, I think he's saying existence instead of essence. In other words, essence becomes derivative, perhaps a matter of choice, perhaps a matter of the draw of the dice, perhaps it never comes to be. What he focuses more and more and more is on the very, feeling or experience of existence in such a dreary, meaningless, absurd, dark, lonely, mortal sort of world, or life existence. In other words, life it doesn't mean that we only survive. He invites us at first to consider that which we defend against, or that which lies at the root of our being. But as I see it, I don't know, maybe I read into it, what emerges sooner or later is that he elevates existence out of where it was before he started. I don't blame him. Before all of them started looking at it, and it becomes like now, I don't know, I repeat myself, the modern equivalent of essence.
Yeah, I can get that. You've got to kind of look at it as you're moving down, well, down rather than up. If you put essence kind of, I don't know where you would put it physically, but essence is kind of the underlying thing, and existence is over the top of it that moves around a lot. So if you view from essence, you're going to see a whole lot of moving around. But if you're in the existence, it doesn't move around half as much because you're inside of it.
No, I agree with you. I think they are polite, and what they don't say is that there is no essence. I think that's what they are trying to tell us, all of them, all four of them, or five of them, that there is no essence.
My take,
Go on.
my take is it's the culmination of the victory of subjectivity that's been coming for a very long time. And he wants to drive it home or make it clearer. He wants to define it more clearly. And be a little more honest about it even. He doesn't say that much that wasn't there.
Who are you talking about?
Sartre, sorry.
Oh.
That wasn't there in the phenomenologists or going all the way back, even Kierkegaard. But if we attribute, that someone like Sartre was a very intelligent man, whatever else one says about him, then I don't know how he could have kind of collapsed into this. Left thinking he's playing a double game somehow. I was reading a book the other day that said he got most of his ideas from de Beauvoir anyway. And he's saying that what presents is not enough, but he's saying there isn't an essence all the same. So he's giving substance to appearance in some way. I found a quotation where he says, we play at being. We've been traitors to being from the moment we're born. Some such. So there's a reaction against he's picking up on Nietzsche, let's say, and the death of God and all that. It's like the final nail in the coffin of absolute thinking, something like that. For me, it doesn't really add up anyway, the way he deals with it.
Right. So it's a shift of viewpoint from the God's eye view to the man's eye view.
Yeah, the individual one as well.
So it makes man infinite in that case, because it's still carrying the same qualities. If it's still carrying the same qualities, it implies that the viewpoint is still the same. So the viewpoint has to be still the God's eye view is just disguised as human.
You see, if you change the indifference of the gods, of the Greek gods, that's accepted. They're indifferent to human beings. If you translate that into human beings, then do they become indifferent to each other? It's the way his novels go, isn't it?
Probably somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's partially a translation of the environment as well, was totally like just trampling all over humanity. So some of it's coming from the environmental things that he was hanging out, like, because he was obviously pre-war, during the war, and after the war. We're talking about Second World War.
Yeah.
So that is impersonal. It's totally impersonal. It's humans being personal about other humans.
But I think Joel used the word something like it's barren, or it's arid, or it's got nowhere to go anymore.
It loses its life to an extent.
Sorry, Joel, I keep missing words again. Joel?
Yes.
Very loud.
Oh, he's muted because those kids are making noise.
Yeah. Sorry, Dennis. It's almost like they've hit a wall for me, the existentialist. And I take everything to be about movement. So what does one do now?
Well, they went they went even more physical, didn't they? Merleau-Ponty went straight into the body.
Yes, yes.
Plus, the environment was like they'd done all the properties that they could get from the environment at the time.
Yes.
But it was impersonal and violent and full of anxiety and all that. That's all. As much as anything, that's the environment they were in, as well as their personal stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Merleau-Ponty takes it more physical and starts looking at breathing patterns and phantom limbs and all that malarkey. From what I remember of it, which isn't very much.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, maybe people like Deleuze begin to break up this logjam, as I see it, by bringing in the idea that movement has plateaus where things slow down, and you can sort of identify. You can talk about. You can use words that an existent would use on the plateau, but the plateau is actually conveying something much more nearer to essence. In other words, the bringing together of those two rather than bringing together of them in a productive way. I mean, not in almost like creating a stasis or an aridity. These are
I haven't read a lot of Deleuze, and I'm probably going to completely misrepresent him in what I'm saying next. But so is it something like just kind of wandering around, bumping into things, and then having a peak experience? Is that what the Plato is?
Not Deleuze. No. Well, I think for me, and Joel, or either of you correct me, because I don't know that much, but Lacan seems to take it even further and say we've got nothing but our desire, and love your desire was his catchphrase, I think, or go for your desire.
Right, that I can kind of see that, because it's if I don't know, if you include the idea that desire is coming from God and it contains its culmination, so you only desire things that you can get or that you already have. You take it to there, then it makes sense to love desire. But if you're wallowing around in a swamp, the only desire you're going to have is to get out of the swamp, really.
Well, I don't know. I say you have to correct me, but Deleuze talks about people as desiring machines. And he says, in effect, and I think he's knocking existentialism somewhat, he says that we're brought up to constrain ourselves. And he seems to focus on desire. So the problem is not that we have desire. He's attributing something to it as well, but that we hold ourselves in. I think his attack on what was it? He takes on Sartre, doesn't he? He takes on psychology, takes on psychoanalysis in a big way for actually holding in desire, not releasing it, whereas it claims to release it.
Right. Okay. So I can see why you would say that. You've got to. Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. That seems to me, and I could be way off, but that's the only animation recognition fully of animation that seems to be left to existentialism. Desire.
Yeah.
If you're going to solidify everything around the individual, what proves the individual if it's not an effective relationship with others? You've got to come up from within, let's say from the subconscious. I don't know where it comes from, and takes you back to drive and so on.
Yeah, I mean, how much of desire would you put in essence, and how much would you put in existence? Can it be moved around so there's more in one and less in the other, and swap around?
But you don't need desire, do you? Between two things in themselves, the energy between is there, if you like, already. Desire, if I take it, arises from the inside the individual, seeking something outside. Let's say connection for the minute. Two entities that are things in themselves coming together, neatly recognize what is there already. if I've got it right.
Well, you might have to put the thing in it for me, Roy.
My very flimsy understanding of this in terms of the Greeks is they dismissed appearance. They thought it was below respect of any kind. If it wasn't fully there, they weren't worth having. And so it was sort of strange game of to cover up essence. And that little piece I wrote, that they took it that the source of energy is in essence, or in the thing in itself. It generates its own energy, just to put it in one way, and the existent has to live off the essence of another entity where that is free flowing. So there's a dependency in the existent that unless it can find someone else to live off, it's a kind of parasite.
Right. So, yeah. So
whether you go with it or not, it gives it gives some sense of to chew on anyway about the relationship between the two.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. So if I was trying to if I'm getting my head around it, it's like if there's like two, for the sake of argument, use people. If we've got two independent-minded, already more or less sorted out people, they meet and they have a relationship, as opposed to two people who aren't sorted out, who are looking for somebody to be the other half.
Yeah.
So
that's the love stuff.
Yeah. So from what I heard you say, that's the difference between existence and essence as well.
I don't know, and then please do tell me if I've got it wrong. But I take it that two existents fall in love out of their want or needs or shallowness or whatever else. Whereas two people who are two things in themselves don't need anything to connect, communicate, whatever the connection.
Right, so there's no need, but there's still a relationship, but without
no relationship between existence. No.
Is yours still there?
Yeah, I'm here. But you moved way ahead of me, and I am I don't know, a stickler for method of sorts, especially that you ask us to provide definitions, and you moved into very interesting attempt to understand what they each are and how they can have relationships. But I was still in my comment to you. For instance, the very word essence over 2,000 years flips from being existence, from being, essence is that which is at the core, to, in Sartrean terms, to that which is at appearance. So it just interesting how language or words or concepts not only change meaning, but jump to the opposite of what they were. The other thing is that philosophy from the beginning tries to anchor everything in foundations. The very search for origin, the search for cause, Aristotelian cause, even the search for will or throughout history, even power, is an attempt to find the underlying, that which precedes, as it were, other things. And so when Sartre says existence before essence, on the face of it, it's revolutionary because he takes what was prior to him, arguably, or prior to Nietzsche, the main search of philosophy, and turns it on its head. He actually returns to does what philosophy has always done. They always wanted to see what is at the core, at the root, at the heart, at the beginning, at the very innermost, at that which precedes, and so on and so forth. So it is a very philosophical, on a grand scale, all philosophical sort of move. So far, I just wanted to prepare before we go into what he means by it or what we understand by it. It's sort of process before content. It's simply to, to draw the map. The map is that Sartre does what every philosopher does. Sorry, Mary, did you say something?
No.
No. He does what every philosopher does. He tries to go from the manifest to the substantial, to the origin, to the root cause, and so on. The second thing is that Sartre attempts to articulate what presumably modernity does. It replaces the absolute with, in my opinion, still an absolute, but an absolute that is less accessible, that is more visceral, that is more physical, that is more body, that is in fact deeper still, both in Freudian terms in the mind and in Darwinian terms in the genes. It's like the, and if you like, in the atom, the components that go beneath knowledge, and perhaps modernity does bring them to the light. So it's not surprising, in a sense, that existence emerges as the new focus of interest. But what people, now I go to where you were, what people read into it is not that all these things now emerge to the surface. What fascinates people, because of the romantic legacy, I suppose, is precisely because it is in the dark. And so there is a double move of sorts in the reader. The reader gloats or is thrilled by the fact that now we can say something, we can articulate the dark or the unconscious or the genetic. We can begin to say something lucid about it. But at the same time, the reader is thrilled about the fact that we are talking about darkness itself. In other words, that which by definition cannot be put into language or into lucidity or into accessibility. So there is a double move that I think is typical of many philosophical traditions, in which we are invited to have the cake and eat it. We are invited to hold on to our frisson or our thrill about the fact that we are now taken to Hades, no less, to the dark recesses of existence. And of course, it rubs shoulders with death, because of course death is a big thing in existentialism, especially Heideggerian, and in mythology and so on. But at the same time, there is this invitation to ours, which to me is a sleight of hand, but it is invitation that we can enter the dark recesses of Hades. We can go there and with a torch, and we can actually bring light to darkness. We can understand mortality, and we can understand this primordial mood or drive or anxiety, or all this anguish, alienation, and boredom, endless concepts that spring from it that people hold on to some extent because they bring meaning, and to some extent because they inhabit the meaninglessness of life, or the inarticulate side of life. So I find it very interesting. I, of course, personally am not thrilled by it, because I'm not taken for a ride, as it seems to me most people do. I don't, on one hand, accept, sorry, I move on a little bit. I don't accept that there is anything dark in life. In other words, we can know everything. There is no problem. We may not know yet, but everything is knowable. The very idea of knowledge is process. It continues its march and it will get everywhere. There is no problem about it. But and also, at the same time, as I said, I personally am not thrilled by mortality, or I'm not saying I'm not conscious of it, or I don't think about it, but I think it needs to be articulated, not mystified, not experienced or talked about in transcendental, mystical, divine, even spiritual way. Because it seems to me that defies the maybe I miss something that defies the purpose of philosophy, which is to liberate people from themselves, as it were, from their tendencies, from their mystification tendency to mystique and to worship and to to look at mortality as if it is in the realm of the divine. It's in the realm of humans. They can perfectly access it. So anyway, there are lots of ideas there, but I don't want to. I want us, Dennis, I don't know, it's up to you, for you to challenge us or to invite us, as you rightly said at the beginning, to answer questions and to pin us down and to say you are not clear and you are not addressing what I'm asking, and so on and so forth, so that it becomes more accessible to others. Because I admit, I speak for myself, maybe Roy is more lucid than me, but I accept that I sort of draw or begin to go into other allusions or other metaphors or other areas of, and perhaps I'm losing the listener in the process. So I personally would welcome pinning down, of course, and I would not defend or.
Yeah, it's interesting that you went to a place where existentialism and Heidegger in particular were focused on death when we're talking about existence and essence.
Yeah.
So existence produces an obsession with the opposite of existence in some ways.
Yes. I mean, it is interesting because Heidegger says we need to live life thinking about death or knowing death or knowing that it is coming. We should never forget that which awaits us at the end of life and so on. So it does bring together, it has endless implications. It brings together what otherwise some people might consider opposites. In other words, it says that death is at the root of life, as it were. So you are right. So then the very notion of existence, which is precisely to be alive, is sort of brought in proximity with the idea of death.
Yeah, it's like without integrating the absence of existence, you can't exist in some ways. So without death, you can't live. Without an awareness of death, you can't live. Just put it like that.
Well, if you move into the area of epistemology, or ordinary sense of knowledge, then yeah, you need boundaries, even if, like the title of the group, for definitions. You need a beginning, like Aristotle said of tragedy, it's merely a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you need this kind of structuring of being to be able to address it, strangely, don't you?
Yeah, Joel at the beginning, I think, equated or made an analogy between structure and essence. Mm-hmm. So the structure, the essence provides the structure of whatever exists, but you may not actually see the structure without going looking for it.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
is what. Yeah. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do here. I just made this up as I went along, as I always do. But definitions was a word that was in my head, so I just went with it. But definitions is just, it's basically giving the group a structure without actually saying what the group's about. Because people come up with their own version of what defining things is about.
So structure is in whatever structure provides is already there in movement.
Yeah, the movement has implied structure underneath it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and or emerges from whatever structure is underneath it. So in that sense, it's kind of an archetypical. It's an emergence process. So for whatever archetype is underneath, it's going to produce a version of that archetype with movement in time added to it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of working through this in my head myself, but like the two things, Joel's right in that the two things are inseparable. Whether they're two poles of something else or whether they're the same. Well, they are the same thing, even if they're two poles, because they're just like a late. One's a late version of the other. If you like.
One thing that strikes me is that we're talking about Sartrean ideas in 20th century, for example. The return to mythos, the return to language, not the return to language, the language, the issue expression, the supposed limitation on us of language and so on. And I mean, this has been around in some way or other, hiding behind other things, but all through. But the fact that it's brought back seems to take us back to an age of individual people separated, lonely, meaningless, da-di-da. In other words, to tragedy in some ways. Tragedy in mythos was a much more violent, colourful thing, but it came down to the impossibility of choice. You know, you go to the left, you're destroyed. You go to the right, you're destroyed. It's only a question of which. The only choice is which way to go to hell, if you like. It's almost like bypassing
I'm losing the sound a bit, Roy. Are you? I've got some back noise going on. You're all right. Carry on anyway. We'll do what we can with it. So good. Well, you're right. You're kind of right in the mythos, because you more or less described the 20th century with what you just said. So I can see why it would revert back to mythos. Whenever you look in the 20th century, you've got a war coming up.
Well, I mean, we're back to, it's the idea of postmodernism, which is a reminder, I think, of the, if you like, the context within which philosophy arose, and to impose that context onto philosophy, whereas philosophy kind of says, no, I'm free flowing, I'm flying free of my background. Postmodernism seems to be saying, no, you're not merely colored and affected, you're even structured, limited by your background.
So, in that sense, the essence of philosophy would be mythos, whether they like it or not.
Well, the issue of subjectivity, the great individual hero battling everything, short man, merry one, the Battle of Britain, pilots I used to think of when I was young. It's almost like the way you die is much more important than the way you live. In other words, the glorious death. If it gives any light, color, meaning, or anything to life, is like the pyre of the hero, or the airplane, or something like that,
Yeah, I mean, it produces its own mythology war anyway, without anybody trying, because you have to propagandize to even get to a place where you're defending yourself. So you have to create your own mythology to even survive in that situation, I think. So something that just
needs their own mythology. Yeah.
Yeah, you need it. You need You need to be fighting something for something bigger than yourself, otherwise you'll just end up dead.
Yeah. Appearance building on appearance.
Sorry, I missed that.
The noises have come again.
Not on my end.
All right, we're doing all right. Anyway, we've done 45. I've got 45 minutes on the recording, so I'm going to stop the recording and we can just talk now, because we're doing all right with it. That's enough. People don't really go past 45 minutes, I don't think, anyway. On